Well, for me, this all began back in 2012. I was driving somewhere with my aunt, Loretta Massey, and I was asking her, give me some information about the Masseys. The first thing she did is she started naming some of the siblings of her father, Milton Coyle Massey. And one of those names that stood out was Fascination. And so I had to check first. I said, are you sure her name was Fascination? And she said, yes, we used to call her Aunt Fassie. So I said, okay, that name is too unique. So, I probably won't be overwhelmed with results if I start looking on the internet. So I started looking for Fascination, and I came across a post on Ancestry.com from a Sha'Ron Downing, who said she was also looking for Fascination. So I kind of felt that she was a relative, and I found her on Facebook, and I sent her a message.
So I was contacted by this guy, Brandon Massey, and said that he had found a posting that I did relating to Fascination Massey on Ancestry.com. And Brandon found me on Facebook, called me and said, I think that we might be related. And so we had a very lengthy conversation. We talked about Rhode Island, talked about Virginia, and we're like, yeah, some of these names, well, actually more than a lot of these names are coming into play that, yeah, okay, you have a Fascination, I have a Fascination. You have a Milton, I have a Milton. You have a Gladys, okay. So, and then I start telling him some things about the Virginia side of the family, and I also mentioned to him that I actually had lived in Newport, Rhode Island for a couple of months with family member and the names that he recognized. So now we determined that we're cousins.
So we were just sharing information back and forth, trying to separate the truth from any rumors and trying to find any information that would back any of the stories we were told growing up. And then one day, Sha'Ron had said something to me that was pretty unbelievable.
So I was visiting Uncle Bay brother, who is Fascination and Abraham Smith's oldest son, Abraham Jr., and we were visiting him in his home in Arlington because he had been battling a long illness, and we wanted to go and see him and pay our respects. So we were sitting around the bed, and we were talking and reminiscing about the family and us coming to his house when we were little, and just some of the fun things, like he was always the uncle that always gave us $1. He was the, he had a piano in the basement. He'd let us all go bang on the keys. So, we had a whole afternoon of just reminiscing, talking about the family in Virginia, Rhode Island, up in New York, Aunt Cecilia, Uncle Eddie. And, he was like one of the family members in Virginia that always ventured out and visited all these family members. So he, was pretty knowledgeable. So at the end of our visit, he just got this little gleam in his eye and a little smirk, and he says, well, we have a madam in the family. I'm like, a madam? I looked at my sister, a madam? And we didn't know if really what he was saying was, if it was like maybe like a fever, he was like, maybe his mind was cloudy. But he got this nice little gleam in his eye, a little, like he was having a little bit of fun telling us about this madam. And he proceeded to say, he didn't say her name, but just proceeded to say it was his great-grandmother. So my sister and I, we talked about it during the drive home, but I kind of like tucked it away in the back of my mind, and I didn't really remember it until I met Brandon.
Now, Sha'Ron had referred to this type of story as kitchen table talk. And so, given that it was kind of like a rumor, I didn't really pursue it at first. And I didn't look into it at all until I found that I wasn't getting any kind of information about the Masseys. So I started Googling things like Massey and Fargo and prostitution. And that's when Melvina popped up, and we found out that she was this infamous madam out in Fargo, North Dakota.
So I met this guy. His name is James Lee Nathan III, and it turns out that he writes sci-fi novels, what he calls the next level of fiction. So we're sitting having lunch, tapas, and he's telling me about his different novels. And so I said to him, so I have an interesting story to tell. And so I proceeded to tell him about my 3 times great-grandmother, Madam Malvina Massey, and told him a couple of stories, and he was hooked.
What I find really interesting about Melvina is the contrast between her profession and that of her sons. Now, her son Henry was a police driver in Pawtucket, Rhode Island, and he also helped found the Union Baptist Church that's located there. But then you have Melvina, and she's running brothels out in Fargo, North Dakota.
So one of the many things that really is interesting for me about Malvina is the fact that she had invitations handmade and delivered to the businessmen of Fargo.
Now, unfortunately, although we know a good deal about Melvina as she relates to Fargo, North Dakota, we know nothing of her outside of that state. We know she was born in Virginia. We know her son was named Henry, and we know where he grew up. But we don't see her anywhere else except for Fargo, North Dakota, and possibly in Chicago. So one of the things I would like this book to do is spark some curiosity and encourage others to do some more digging about Melvina so we can find even more information about who she really was.
So what I want people to appreciate about Malvina and really absorb this, if this was a woman, a mulatto, born in 1838 during slavery, that relocated to Fargo, North Dakota, and went on to become not only an infamous madam, but a successful businesswoman. And she has a story, which is being told by author James Lee Nathan III, with Malvina, the Color of Power.